So Figma's been in the news lately due to their acquisition by Adobe. And so Figma's been on my mind. And this somehow led me to want to redesign one of the features in Figma that bugs me a lot. So I'm going to show you my thought process and how I would redesign this feature and show you the working prototype that I built. So the feature is the effects section of the inspector here, which is what you use to add drop shadows, blurs, and stuff like that. So to add a drop shadow, you click the plus here. It adds a row. And to edit the properties of it, you click this little sun icon. And then you can set, the blur, the X and the Y. But what is it that bugs me about this? Well, there's several things, and I'll go through them. First is this icon. It's a sun, which seems strange. Why is it a sun? Couldn't it be an icon that represents the type of effect? You can change the effect here, and it would be nice to have an icon that represents that. But there's no icon like that in the Figma UI, or so I thought. I went digging around, and then I realized that you can create an effect style, and those will actually use an icon. So you can see here the different styles, and they have icons in there for these things. So it makes a lot more sense to me that when you create a layer blur, that it should use that icon. I don't love the icons that they have currently, so I redesigned them, and I'll show you in a second what I came up with. But let me show you some of the other things that bug me here. So another is that we have a drop-down menu here for changing to these different things. But every time, even though I've been doing this for years, I click here, and then I say, how do I change this? Oh, it's over here. And I think that's because the fill color works like that, where you click it, and then up here you can change it to a different type of fill. So I want the effects to work the same way. And then what I would do is remove this drop-down from here entirely. And you may think, well, removing that means you lose the kind of quick access if you wanted to change it. But when do you ever change this and then not edit the properties? If I set it to layer blur, I'm almost always going to want to go in here and set a specific blur amount. And usually you just set this once and then that's the thing you want. It's not like you're switching between, let me see how a drop shadow looks and let me see how a layer blur looks. The thing that you're changing is these settings in here. And this you just set once. So it makes a lot of sense, I think, to just put that here and not have it here at all, because that frees this up to be a click area to activate this panel so that it's not just this small button, it's the whole row. Now, when you have a shadow and you click into here, I find this tab order very confusing, because if I want to go from X to Y, I think, well, I have to press tab twice because it's first going to tab over to the field to the right of it, because that's how tab order works in every other app. But when I hit tab, it goes down, and then you hit it again and it goes up and across, and then it goes down. So that's very strange to me. So I think we can bring the X and the Y to be horizontal, and that's going to make this UI a lot more clear. Okay, and the last thing that bugs me here is that when you click plus to add a new thing, it defaults to drop shadow. And so here's the drop shadow that I've already created. When I hit plus, which one is the one that I had already and which one is the new one? It's hard to tell because it just instantly appears there. It could have added it to the top of the list or the bottom. I don't necessarily know. So we'll look at a fix for that as well. So let me go over to this tab here. This is my prototype of how I would improve this feature. And this is fake Figma. This is all fake except for the effects panel here, which actually works. So in my prototype, when you click plus, you'll notice there's an animation in when that comes in. I'll add a couple more. And you see each one animates in. That animation is not to look fancy or cool. It's to let me know where the new item appeared. So if it appears on the top of the list, you see it animate in on the top of the list, and it's clear that that's the one that you just added, not the one below. And we have the same animation when it disappears as well. Now, another thing you may have noticed there is that when I click the plus, it immediately pops up this panel for that item. And that's because I'm never going to create this and not immediately start tweaking the setting. So that's more convenient for me, so I can just come in here, adjust some of the properties, and you'll see that the layout I have here is a little different. The X and the Y are now horizontal, so when you tab, the tab order is as expected. And then next time you tab down, down. And we've got blur radius and spread kind of separated from the X and the Y. I think this is a really comfortable, intuitive layout. And you can change these from here now. So no longer are you changing them down here. In fact, you can click anywhere in the row, makes it easier. You can change it here. And I think that makes more sense and is more in line with the way it works on fills. I also added a little note here because when you do a background blur, you need to reduce the fill opacity of the layer for the background effect to be visible. And if it's your first time doing this and you might not understand why the background blur is not working, and then this is a little note that just says reduce the fill opacity to reveal the background blur effect. So that just shows up in the background blur, but not the regular blur. And of course, we've got the icon here representing the type of effect. So let me add one for each of these. Okay, so we've got all of them. These are my redesigned icons. Of course, I mentioned they have icons already, which would work, but I redesigned them. I don't know if I totally love these, but I tried to match the sort of Figma style. So that was just for fun, a little unsolicited redesign of the effects feature in Figma, because it always bugs me a little bit when I use it, and I wanted to take a shot at how I would like it to work. And if you're wondering how I put together this prototype, I mocked it all up in Figma, and then I built it using Imba. I've got a lot of videos on my channel about Imba, but you can see that this is just a prototype because this whole inspector is just an image, and this stuff here is actual content. I redrew all the little icons and used Imba to be able to put together the interaction quite quickly.